The unabating hike in price of food commodities in Nigeria, despite a slight decrease in inflation rate in the month of December, has continued to worsen the cost of living crisis across the country, putting balanced diet out of reach for many Nigerians, especially low-income earners, as the price of basic food items increase at double-digit percentage every other week. With the recent Global Hunger Index, in which Nigeria ranked about 103 out of 121 countries, and an NBS, that's the National Bureau of Statistics, estimating that 133 million people are multidimensionally poor, with food as one of the indicators. Nigeria is no doubt at the risk of food insecurity, fueled by persistent violence in the northern part of the country, as well as flooding, which is one of the effects of climate change and variability impacting Nigeria. Well, let's talk more around this and assess the level of food inflation in Nigeria and, of course, food security. Well, I'm being joined live in our Lagos studio by a food security expert. He's AfricanFarmer Mogaji. He's a friend of the house. It's good to see you. Well, it's still a new year, so compliments of the season. This is the first time I'm having you live on the show this year.
It's been a while since I've come for this program.
How have you been?
Yeah, great.
What's been happening in the sector? Let's start on that note, because I know there's a lot, don't let us say in that pipeline that we always talk about, because that pipeline, I don't know what's going to happen to that pipeline this year. But really, what's been playing out in the industry generally?
Well, the industry has been facing quite a lot of challenges post-COVID, but last year it actually peaked. A bit banditry, insurgency, but primarily lack of planning from regulatory agencies. When we have challenges with fluctuation of dollar for forex, many other times we don't also relate it to the food sector, because 100%, when I say 100, I mean 100% of most of the inputs when it comes to chemicals and insecticides, fungicides that you use to take care of weeds, and a chunk of about 80–90% of the seeds all are imported, dollar dependent. Most of these don't make the news. So when there's a challenge with dollar, it affects everything. And most importantly also, when we have the naira lose value, labor comes from outside of the country for various regions in the country. So when naira loses value, what happens is the labor who come don't show up. So that's, the industry has had series of challenges coupled with policy somersaults, which is constant. Policy somersaulting in agriculture is constant. If you plan with policy somersaulting, you are likely to do better. It's just that, unfortunately, no matter how you plan, especially for middle and big scale players, they always get hit below the belt. For the small and the micro, they still play around it because the numbers are larger. You try to scale every 2-3 years. You move one step forward, 3 steps backward. Policies always change, and it has been changing, and it still keeps changing. We're hoping that the new administration will be able to do something. Fortunately, the 3 top contestants have business background. So there's a lot of hope that there might be some balancing happening. However, I'm still not seeing a lot of sunshine, because when you look at the body language, like the World Bank, United Nations, through the Food and Agriculture Organization, just said that 25 million Nigerians, will be hungry between June and August. But that is not, you don't find the people on the campaign trail talking about it. So it still gives me concern that if 25 million Nigerians will go hungry, and don't forget also, according to Bureau of Statistics, over 50% of salaries go on food purchase. 50% of your salary and every other person. So this food should be number 1, as against, we always hear it, number 3, number 4 on agendas. And when you check a lot of documentation that is out, it's still not looking good.
But I would like to interject and say that a lot of interventions have gone into the agricultural space. and we can start to quote figures. According to the central bank, I think it's even more than 1 trillion naira, according to what they have said. But now, what is really happening? I know we always talk about this most times I have you on the show. Is it really not trickling down? Where are these monies getting to? Who are the beneficiaries? We see the Northern Farmers Union coming to say, oh, a lot of us have been empowered. We've had this, we've had that in rice. We've done that. Before we go into some partnerships that have been going on also recently, what is happening to all of the interventions? AFDB is there throwing in some money too. So what is really happening to all of this? You know, hundreds of millions of dollars.
I would say it's primarily investment mismatch. And what do I mean by investment mismatch? So we sit in the offices, in the ACs, and say and read a report and say, this is what they need. We almost never, as policymakers, as CBN, bring it down to ask the people, what do they need? Like, if the money is given to, subsidies and co to plants, is put into processing and mechanization, we would have at least 40% that goes to waste converted as food. Then we can export because we have products that can go on more shelf life. So bottom line is there's a lot of myopic planning from CBN. I will not mince words, because if you have put in this amount of these trillions and we can't find food, there's a lot of noise. I use the word noise around rice. There's a lot of noise around rice. Rice is just going down, not because of the intervention, because people have chosen to look for alternatives. So bottom line is that these interventions don't involve the players. See, this intervention business, food security is about logistics. Logistics is 50% of the success of any intervention. Have you heard any funding going into logistics? Have you heard any logistics going into heavy storage? Even the storage that the private sector have gotten from government has not been released. So bottom line is that these interventions mostly is not thought through end to end. You just say, oh, we want to produce rice. But what's the end to end of rice? You must start with seeds. You must start with funding the research institutes. You must start with partnering with the seed companies. All these things we don't do. We just want to push inputs, seed, fertilizer, chemicals into the hands of farmers for them to go and produce. That is the least that we need. We need more processing, but beyond the processing, if we don't control the seed, we will always be at the mercy of the importers. So seed is imported. Most of the seed is imported. And also, if we don't get the fertilizer producers in the country getting over 70% of the contracts to supply fertilizers, we will not be food secure. It's the imported fertilizers that probably they are blending here that is doing fine. So bottom line is that we have our arts fully messed up because we don't pay attention to industry players. The CBN, I can tell you categorically, they may disagree with this and come after me as they normally do occasionally, but I'll tell you this. They are not working with the banks. Enough is enough of all this. They are affecting many of us. Many middle and upper are weeping and crying because they don't have this round table to sit people down. Funding in oil palm, for instance. You fund oil palm, but about 70% of the oil palm producers in the country are mid and small. And yet you put in funding, and the funding, you are asking that in 6 months they should repay the money. And the oil palm you want to fund will take 3.5 to 5 years to grow.
How does that work?
And now, so it's the big players who can access the money and work with it. What I'm saying can be verified. I will come back publicly to apologize if it is wrong, but you can take it to the bank. It's not.
No, I like that. We need to criticize most of these policies and see the pros and the cons, because a lot of money, our money, is being put into this. And I think accountability, transparency should be the order of the day, because I know there was a time a lot of investment on fertilizer and all of that. And we heard people importing all of that into this country. But let's talk about expanding our export infrastructure, because we see that government is looking that way. And I think the figures from NEPC lately was pretty good. thanks to the ED, Dr. Yekusak, when he reeled out those figures, I was quite impressed. But what more? What more do you think? We can do better than that. What do you think?
You see, what we have in export will be a mirage very soon. Why? Sustainability is about grassroots. If the raw material does not meet a certain quality over a period of time, that export contract would be cancelled. We are not investing in the raw. Our cocoa yield has dropped. Name whatever export we're talking about now in the non-oil agri sector. We're still gathering some. But will it be sustainable? The answer is no. Without the structure, the systems, not even the cocoa, the oil palm now, the systems to take care if there's a viral disease is not there. The logistics is not there. So bottom line is that, yes, we've made some improvements, some strides, yes. But will it be sustainable? No. 2-3 years down the line, if we're not careful, if we don't, empower quarantine, we need to fund quarantine. We need to fund the systems, the chemicals they would use, organic or inorganic, that they would use. We don't have the systems taking care of that. So bottom line is that the systems, government has not paid attention to systems. We've paid attention to inputs, to activities, but it is the systems that sustain it. If government has the systems working, if we have quarantine effectively working as the staffs will want to work, you don't see budgets going to quarantine. You don't see budget, bringing together the middlemen until we bring in that system. When Nigeria was leading in oil palm, cocoa, and co, it was the systems that was working.
All of those stories we heard that the palm nut was taken to a country, I won't mention the name right now, and today we are importing from there. That's a story we've all heard, and it seems to be true.
So you see, systems, it's still systems. So there's, that story also is also not totally right, because the Europeans set up, it was a joint operation between Nigeria and Malaysia.
Okay.
And so they developed the oil palm seed in Nigeria. So they now took it away to establish. That's where that controversy comes in. It was developed in partnership with Nigerian and Malaysian government, the Tenera variety. So, but what they did, they focused on the small scale. We focused on the big scale. So the small scale became sustainable over time. The big scale on the immediate did well. So the cutlass they were used to cut, because of the small scale, it worked. Then it was government that set up mills in the midst of these rural farmers. And they did not buy the land like we buy lands in Nigeria. They went into a JV with the community. So the communities were stakeholders until we bring it back, this policy of being stakeholders with the rural community. After they buy the land, 10 years, 20, 30 years down the line, the community will revolt again. That is what is affecting majority of our big projects. Small projects, India small projects, Malaysia small projects, Indonesia small projects. The countries that are doing fine focus on small projects, rural. Every policy, every plan is on the rural, not just dumping. We want to give fertilizer, we want to give chemicals. That is the least. If you go to the farmers, they will tell you, it's welcome, but that's not what we need. We need a market structure. No state has a market structure. We need processing. AFDB is funding. Fine, good. But guess what? Those funds, I don't apologize for this. Those funds may not work. You build the factories, the ultra-modern factories, but the pineapples, if you're going to process pineapples, many varieties, you need 1, 2, 3, 4 varieties. So those giant equipments will be installed, but there will not be raw materials that would work with it. That is the real thing now. So you don't have the states doing backward integration, planting one type of rice that can be processed, planting 2, 3 types of pineapples, purpose. Everybody is just focusing on infrastructure without empowering the people. with the systems that they require.
Let's talk about the Lagos rice mill at Imota. Laudable project there instituted by Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and the president was here to commission it. You're a player in this sector. Tell us more about what this means for a state like Lagos, and of course Nigeria as a country.
Well, in the last 3 years, the commissioning of the rice mill, brought joy to my soul. Why? Because they did the right thing. I was concerned about sustainability for that rice because it's quite big, and Lagos does not have the right land to support it. They require almost 600,000 acres of land to plant the rice required for that. Yes, and that's for 1 year. And for that to be sustainable, we need to have silos full of rice paddy that they can process for like 2-3 years. So, but the good thing that makes me excited about it is that the management is not political. The management is by an organization, a company that has the experience, is one of the biggest rice producers in the country, and beyond that, plays heavily in over 20 years in the seed, fertilizer, and chemicals. So what that means is that they don't need government to function effectively. They will run the business. And guess what? Even if there's a challenge in one region, they can mobilize paddy from another region. So beyond the commissioning, the management. If implementing that management has already made that mill sustainable for 10 years. If they didn't go that route and went with the route they were going before, then that mill will not work. So right now, there's a lot of economic development that will happen where I call the oil to rice corridor or rice to oil corridor. That is Imota rice to Dangote refinery. That is the corridor. So development will come feeding. People will be able to buy rice cheaper, but beyond the rice, the livestock the rice bran, that's the cover of the rice. Those things will create a value chain along our livestock value chain. The supplies would be huge also. The development, feeding the staffs, and moreover, across I did a bit of a calculation. About 5 million of liters will be required to plant the rice to supply. About 7 billion in payment for tractor services.
Wow.
So, and on and on and on, about according to the commissioner and our calculation also, 640 bags of rice per hour. That is huge. 3,500 trailers will move in that value chain. So bottom line is that the rice mill is the best thing that we players have heard in a while. Most importantly, the management. And I'd say a huge thank you to Governor Sanwo-Olu for collaborating with the commissioner, because the commissioner is a private sector person, and they delayed the launching to get it right, as against launching it and now trying to manage it. So now government can face government work.
Interesting stuff. Let's wrap up on this note. So you touch on adding value, and I think it's important that we add value to most of our products. See what is happening, even with oil and gas, even what we do with our condensates and all of that, and not to talk of what we do with the likes of cocoa, what we do with the likes of, we can go on and on. All of this, we move it out and we buy it more expensive when it comes here. What more are we doing with adding value, and what is your outlook for the entire space?
Well, the new administration will add value. No doubt about it. They are handicapped. So they would add value to be able to generate.
So that should be one of the first things they should focus on.
Yes. To add value at modular levels. Not anything big doesn't work in this country, except by some experts, foreign experts. The ones that work are modular, that you don't need to manage the people. And beyond that is the input. Localizing these things and getting the players to tell you how to go. Unfortunately, the currency, the Naira policy is going to truncate a lot of things also now, because everything is cash in the village. It is they look for daily pay, morning pay, afternoon pay, evening pay. Now there's no cash to give them. So what that means is that food inflation is going higher. But if we can, we're not paying attention to how the rural economy influences everything. When we pay attention to the fact that it's the rural economy that supports the urban economy, especially food, 50% of salaries, 50. So if anything goes up now, labor is going to go up. And unfortunately, we have started weaponizing Naira now because the new currency, is scarce. So because it's scarce, we weaponize it. People will go after that money and not do the work again. And unfortunately, the people who want to do the work don't have the cash. So very soon, you'll see food go up. When the currency is available in state capitals, 3-4 months down the line, will have that effect. And don't forget, there's a prediction that 25 million will go hungry. Yeah. So it's likely to increase. But yeah, if we get it right, the new administration, will feed Nigeria.
Interesting chat with you as usual. I've been speaking to food security expert there, AfricanFarmer Mogaji. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Nigeria. We appreciate your time. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.